All right. May I ask a question? Do you guys see this as backwards? Can someone answer my question? Does it look, is it backwards? Can you read it? Or does it, God. Hi everybody and welcome to Deer Hunter Instagram live feed. This will be the one that we keep on the profile. So this is an explanation of the cover art for Why Hasn't Everything Already Disappeared. We started recording the record in Texas. Then we moved to Los Angeles to do some additional work on the album and retrack some things and add vocals and different things. And I developed laryngitis, very bad, from ragweed, I think. I get laryngitis very rarely, like once every 4 or 5 years. And I literally couldn't talk. So I called my doctor and I said, what do you recommend? We're on a tight deadline here. And we really need to get this record done. So what should we do? He said, take the day off. Just go. Don't sing and don't talk to anybody. I don't know if you know me, but not talking is a very difficult thing for me to do. Unless I'm in a bookstore or a record store. I have no problem browsing, or a thrift store. Like, I can browse and not talk and be fine. But if I'm around people, I have to talk because I get nervous in silent situations. So, I was told by my boss, Kate LeBon, to go away and to come, protect my voice and come back when it was, And she had the boys work on overdubs. So, I drove around Los Angeles. And I ended up at one of my favorite bookstores, Counterpoint Books, which I believe is on Franklin or near Franklin. It's near the Oaks Market. It's also near I think it's Upright Citizens Brigade. It's one of the oldest, I don't know about what I'm talking about. I don't know how old it is, but it's one of my favorite book and record stores in the world, and every time I go in there I find fantastic things. The Iliad, yes, is also great, which I went to on your recommendation, Louis. I found some great books there as well, but I think the Counterpoint is really amazing because it's a bit more eclectically curated, but it is, weird used stuff. For example, this book fell off the shelf, okay? I was trying to get a book on Asger Jorn. Asger Jorn, how much do I even read? What does that mean? How much do I even read? I would love if Tim Presley went on tour with Deer Hunter. I've offered him a position in the band. It's up to him. He's got a lot of projects, and I don't want to interfere with White Fence. How much do you even read? How much do I even read? Is that a nice question, or is that mean a question? Maybe I'm misinterpreting it. Who's angry? Perfume by Patrick Siskins. I want to read that book. I mean, I've heard of it, but I've heard some people say it's pretty... whatever. Look, I want to talk about this book. This fell off the shelf. It's a great book. It's called Peter Ackerman Volume 2, and it's from the Mathilde Darmstadt, 1980. It's a book that fell off the shelf at Counterpoint Books, okay? And it wasn't a cheap book. But I had to have it. This is not something I consider myself to be generally ever have any experience with. It's incredibly detailed ink drawings. As you guys probably know, if you know me or follow Instagram, if you know about Deer Hunter and me and stuff, I'm interested in all forms of art, and I particularly took a liking to gouache and watercolor, but I'm more interested in things like Turner and British watercolors and these sort of formalist things. Alternately, I'm also interested in, of course, in people like Helen Frankenthaler and Agnes Martin. I'm interested in a lot of strange things. So one thing I'd never really been interested in was pen and ink drawing. It always seemed to me like a very masculine, I don't know. It seemed to me like, what is it that I can say it seems like? It seems lonesome and obsessive compulsive. These incredibly intricate drawings. When I was young, I was very interested in Piranesi. I don't know how to pronounce things. Piranesi. Because I discovered a book in a library of his pictures of ruins, and I became very interested in intricate ink drawings of ruins. This was when I was about 10 or 11 years old. Well, I was walking Counterpoint Books. I reached for an Asger Jorn book, a member of the Cobra group, and a great painter. And when I reached for that monograph, another book fell, this one. I don't know why. It's alphabetically, Asger Ackerman. I don't know if that was it. I don't know what happened. The book fell open to this page, and I shit you not. This page. I was absolutely in love because I've been reading a lot of J.G. Ballard, a lot of the New World science fiction magazine when it was edited by Michael Moorcock. I've been reading a lot of that sort of British dystopian 70s British brutalist sort of. And I said, this is the sound of our album. This is the harpsichord, the fine, tiny, I just wish there was more light, the tiny dots, the stippling. I said, that's the harpsichord, that's the hi-hat. All the textures that I wanted our album to have, I found in these ink drawings. And there's so many more. There's a really fantastic artist, and an artist that has no problem with enigmatic images and bleak images. And I was really afraid you guys were going to absolutely despise the cover, because frankly, a lot of people thought it was a very shockingly bleak image for a very bleak album. And why brutalism? Well, I'll tell you that I read a book called Horror in Architecture when I was in London. I got it at an art bookshop in, what's that neighborhood over by the Japanese hotel and the Ace Hotel? Shoreditch. They have a great art bookshop. And, I got a book called Horror in Architecture. And I mean, brutalism is always, I've found, we have a great brutalist building that I've learned more about everything in the world since 1993 or 92. I've spent more time in a brutalist building, probably the Central Library in Atlanta, Georgia, which you should all go Google. The Central Library, which Atlanta is actually discussing tearing down. Which absolutely appalls me, is one of the greatest examples in America of brutalist architecture. I found this book because it fell on the floor. When I found the cover of Halcyon Digest, it's because I had a book in my library, which I'll go to the library. I was looking for an album cover. This is, there's some people walking their dogs. My house up on the hill, watching these. The artist is Peter Ackerman. And so look here. I was like, damn it. There's the Asger Jorn book I was talking about, a book on Cobra. You might recognize the name from Cobra and Phases, Play Voltage, The Milky Night. And I was looking at Ponce de Leon. This book fell off the shelf, okay? This happens to me quite often. I'm going to sit here in this chair and talk with you. It's very often that books fall off on shelves and end up becoming album covers for Deer Hunter. This is a book by my friend George Mitchell, and it's called Ponce de Leon, and it's about Ponce de Leon in the late 70s and early 80s, and Ponce de Leon is a very interesting part of Atlanta. And honestly, I think I couldn't do it justice by trying to discuss it here. But it's a place where we've all lived at some point or another. And we've all worked. I think everybody in Deer Hunter has worked on Ponce at some point. And I was flipping through this book when I got it, and I didn't notice anything that spectacular. I thought this building is featured in a novel I'm writing about Laurie Spiegel, kind of somewhat influenced by Laurie Spiegel. Benjamin Smoke died in this building. You just asked for a Benjamin Smoke connection. He died in this building. I always like this picture. But there's a reason why I'm showing you this book. There's a lot of sad people, a lot of lonely people, an elder woman staring out of her room, and But one day I was looking for the cover of Halcyon Digest, and I guess you know what you're going to see. And the book fell up into this picture. Which some of you may realize is a familiar image. The Miss Starlight pageant, a female impersonation pageant contestant, Dennis Dinion, a former actor who played the mayor of Munchkinland in The Wizard of Oz. The kind of trivia you don't get anywhere else, guys. Who took the picture was a genius of a man who I'm glad to call my friend George Mitchell. George Mitchell is also somebody who's made more field recordings of amazing music than almost anyone I can think of. Fat Possum Records released a collection